Alright guys, been out riding today. Got a new bike a while back. Got through riding today and I thought, I said, well, that'd be a good time to make a video on the soft-tail Deuce. You see a lot of videos on Deuces for sale on YouTube. Not too many people just make a video about their bike and modifications it's had done to it and trouble they've had, which I'm going to talk about in a minute because I definitely ran into some problems. I got the bike into the spring. Yeah, late spring, coming in the summer. I traded the Road King I had even for this bike. Touring bikes are great. It just didn't fit my riding style that well, so I opted to make a trade even for the soft-tail Deuce. And I hadn't had it long, about, I'd say maybe 2 months. I rode it to Myrtle Beach Bike Week, and everything ran fine. I thought the bike was in tip-top running shape. I really did. It ran great. The carburetor ran real good on it. It was tuned in real well. And I decided it had I think it had 26,000 miles. And I said, well, I'm going to take it in and have it upgraded to hydraulic tensioner, so I don't have to worry about that in the back of my mind. Have the cam tensioner go out and leave me stranded with a blown up engine. Took it to a local independent mechanic I trust. He does real good work. And the next day he called me and said, can you come up here? We need to talk about the crankshaft. I thought to myself, this is never good. This is not good when the mechanic calls you and tells you to come up here, we need to talk. So I got there and we walked back in the shop portion where they do the work, and he had a dial indicator set up on the crankshaft, on the pinion shaft. Cams and cam plate and oil pump, everything was removed. He said, watch that dial indicator. And he turned it over, and I saw with my own eyes about, it was over 20,000 run out, which that's bad. And the oil pump was chewed up pretty good. The bushing that goes in the cam plate, the oil ring inside of it was almost worn out from the pinion shaft doing this as it ran. So he said you might could ride it some more like this. And I thought about it. I said, no, I don't care. I know it's going to cost them a good bit of cash, but let's fix it. Because in the back, I wouldn't have rode it. Knowing that something was wrong with it, I wouldn't have rode it. It just sit in that building up there, and I wouldn't have rode it. So we went up and looked at the options. And what I decided to go with, you can send your crankshaft when you run into these problems to a Dark Horse or Revolution, and they'll true and weld it. And 9 times out of 10, that's going to take care of your issue. But with over 20,000 run out, I was afraid. I said, this thing is twisted too much to what else? I said, no, let's put a new crankshaft in it. So we looked at options. Jim makes one, S&S. I don't know. There's probably somebody else I'm not thinking about. But I opted to go with the Screaming Eagle crank. It's a stroker crank, so now it's I can't remember the bore strokes on it. I should have wrote that down and reminded myself. But you could go with a 96-inch motor or a 103 when you use this Screaming Eagle stroker crankshaft. And I opted for the 96 because really the 88 had enough power for me. I don't ride real fast, but I figured go ahead and fix it, stroke it, and get a little more power out of it. So I ended up with a 96-inch motor, which is a stroker, but in 07 that started coming standard. So I don't know if you really consider it a stroker or not, but it's a 96. I went with a S&S 510 grind cams, the Screaming Eagle hydraulic tensioner upgrade, the Screaming Eagle oil pump, all that. Screaming Eagle adjustable push rod, quick connect, and believe it or not, it really made a huge difference on the way this bike rides. You don't even have to barely give it any throttle to go. If you're going up a hill at 55 miles an hour. Now with the 96-inch motor with the S&S 510 cam, you don't feel any change at all. The tone of the engine doesn't change. It made it a lot more fun to ride. It gives it a lot more torque. I'm knocking on I got 809 miles on it since the engine rebuild, and at 1,000 miles, I'm gonna take it back to him and have it dyno tuned for this engine. The carburetor was tuned for a stock 88 motor, so now I'm running a 96 motor with the S&S 510 cam. So we're gonna tune the carburetor, and I got a feeling it'll come back with a little more power than what it's got now. It runs fine now. The only complaint I got, it's a little bit hard to start when the engine's hot, and I think that's just a carburetor tuning issue, because it never was like that before we went with the 96-inch with the cams and everything. That's very uncommon for this to happen on an 88-inch motor. I've never known anybody to run into this with a crankshaft issue. The engine mechanic said most likely it came from lugging the engine, in other words, not keeping your RPMs high enough. And he said that's really bad for any engine, really. He said for a V-twin, it's extra hard on them to do that. So I myself didn't lug the engine, but like I said, the bike had 26,000 miles on it when I got it. I don't know what happened to it before then. The top end looked real good. The hash marks were still in the cylinder. So I don't think that the crankshaft issue came from abusing the engine, because if you were sitting in a burnout box, just bouncing it off the rev limiter a lot, that's going to get it real hot, and that should have done some damage to the top end. Maybe it wouldn't, but the top end looked real good on it. So like I said, a lot of money later, come back with a 96-inch motor. But the bike's got, you can see, got the Thunderstar front wheel on it. Everything up here is chrome. A lot of people ask me what color it is. I said chrome. I'm going to have to replace the rear wheel. It's got one of those rear wheels that was sent off in one of those places where you trade in your wheel and they send you a chrome one, and they didn't do a good job. The chrome's flaking off, so I'm not gonna even deal, not even fool with one of those companies. I'm gonna order the Deuce chrome rear wheel from Harley Davidson. It's expensive, $750, but I've never had an issue with any chrome that comes factory on a Harley bike, so I'm just going to do that and be done with it. These Vance & Hines pipes are starting to get discolored back here. I might make somebody mad when I say this, but I've never been a huge fan of Vance & Hines. I'm going to probably go with something different. And I hadn't made my mind up. I like the fact that these have the crossover, give you a little bit more torque. But I was looking at Cobra makes a good looking set of pipes that has the crossover built in also. So that's it in a nutshell. Like I said, don't watch this video and get terrified that, oh God, I need to check my crankshaft. It's probably jumped just like his. At 99.9% chance it's probably fine. I know in 07, when they first went to the 96-inch engine, there were some of those bikes had issues, but from my understanding, it was a very few amount, maybe 3 or 4%. So if you've got an 07 bike, don't watch this and say, oh God, he said my 07 is junk. It's not. It most likely is fine, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to check the pinion shaft run out on it if you do have an 07. But if I do any more upgrades, when I get the wheel and the new pipes, I'll do a video. I'll start the bike and everything. In fact, I can start it now. Sounds good. I'll be honest with you, other than the idle, I can't tell a lot of difference the way it sounded before and after the engine rebuild. The idle, it's got more of a look to it at idle as far as going down the road. I can't tell much difference in the sound of the engine between the 88 and the 96. So that's it in a nutshell. This is my 03 Deuce. I've got a chip in the paint I'm going to have fixed this winter. Luckily, it's not in that watermark. It's up here.